Please be warned, the end of this video contains aggressive seizure-inducing footage, so if you are sensitive to that sort of thing, be extremely cautious jumping ahead to the timestamp shown on screen. Sonic Colors Ultimate is one of Sonic's worst releases ever, and I am genuine when I say that. Not because Sonic Colors is a terrible title. No, it's a solid time. I wish all the acts in each planet were fully unique. There is quite a bit of level design reused throughout, but the game is otherwise an approachable, fun platformer for players of all ages, and acquiring collectibles in the highest ranks gives those looking for more challenge and longevity something to sink their teeth into. That said, this is not a review of the actual game. Instead, I'll be focusing on the quality of the remaster, which is shockingly poor, and that came as a surprise to me considering Sega has an infamous history with releasing technical messes that, in some ways, haunt them to this day. Unfortunately, they've proven once again that they have not learned their lesson and are still content pushing out subpar products for their iconic blue blur. Just for clarity, my review copy was provided by Sega, and I played on a PlayStation 4 Pro. All footage shown in this video is based on updates 102 and 103, the latter of which came out on launch day, September 3rd, halfway through my recording sessions. I was not able to discover meaningful differences between these two versions, and the patch note, general bug fixes, doesn't exactly help narrow anything down. Perhaps by the time this video is out, or further down the line, more problems are ironed out, and I will leave a pinned comment in the comment section if so, though Sega never mentioned any patches to me to be aware of. Either way, future fixes or not, the state Colors Ultimate released in is inexcusable. To start on a positive note, however, the upgrade in frame rate and resolution are very apparent. Ultimate runs at a smooth 60 frames per second with only the occasional brief stutter in certain sections, and the game looks far clearer than the original did on the Wii. While OG Colors was graphically impressive for its console, the 480p resolution makes for a crusty, dated visual presentation that can be difficult to go back to when playing on anything else than a classic CRT, and 30 FPS caps certainly do not do Sonic games any favors. When the action got intense, Colors on the Wii could also exhibit slowdown. The Frenzy Wisp and its destruction was a big culprit for this, but these same segments run perfectly and at full speed in Ultimate. Many of the textures are significantly sharper than before too. Not all of them, there are still textures here and there that look somewhat low res, like parts of this giant burger in Sweet Mountain, but combined with the immeasurable bump in resolution, overall image fidelity has cleaned up a lot. Despite that, ever since the first trailers came out, the updated graphics themselves in Ultimate have been controversial amongst fans. Primarily, the lighting and shaders are overhauled from scratch, and it gives each setting a decidedly different look than they had on the Wii. The bloom is cranked up pretty hard in Ultimate. While this can be striking at first, the more I looked at it, the more overbearing it became. I certainly think that could have been toned down somewhat. Sonic himself especially looks way too bright and shiny, and the lighting doesn't exactly work on him. His eyes, and the eyes of any character for that matter, are dulled out and grayish, which is not good art direction for a cartoon hedgehog. Areas like Tropical Resort are also far too saturated for my taste, and the stark contrast between light and dark parts of the scenery doesn't do it for me. I much prefer how Tropical Resort looks on the Wii, where the colors are balanced and everything is more evenly lit, with shadows from objects and buildings creating the desired depth. To be fair, I feel Tropical Resort made the worst transition. Areas like Sweet Mountain come across more naturally and are subtly but elegantly enhanced with modern rendering techniques like these light rays shining down from the sky. I don't want to linger on this topic for long though, since these visual changes are pretty subjective by nature, and the best I can really tell you is that barring resolution and texture quality, neither version necessarily looks superior over the other. They're just different. Personally, I feel the overall appearance in OG Colors is more cohesive and blends the environments better with characters and objects, and running the game on the Dolphin emulator, removing said resolution and frame rate discrepancies from the equation for the sake of comparing the two aesthetics, solidifies my preference. I just wish every planet looked consistently great, and that the bloom slider wasn't pushed up so far it broke the physical limit of the slider. Whether you enjoy the updated look or not, however, what's undeniably shoddy is that it is not consistent between gameplay and cutscenes. You see, in the latter, the environments and Sonic himself appear identically to how they did on the Wii, not Ultimate, reason being that the cutscenes in OG colors were pre-rendered video files, and Ultimate reused these files. Not only does that create the awkward visual differences between gameplay and cutscenes, it also means the cinematics look diabolical. The source material is compressed 480p, and the AI upscaling they applied cannot hide this fact. Jaggies are super obvious, and the inherent compression artifacts smear much of the detail into a blurry mess, particularly when there is motion. Now, at first I was feeling generous enough to give them a pass on the cutscenes until modders discovered that all the original animation data is present in Ultimate's files. By extension, the team could have made the cutscenes run in real time at 60 FPS with the updated visuals, but for whatever reason they went with a quick and dirty approach instead, and it definitely shows. Thus far then, we're doing alright, but regrettably, believe it or not, the above is the least of our concerns with this remaster. What completely caught me off guard as I play through is the absurd amount of graphical glitches that are in here. I don't even know where to begin with this, but the issues can broadly be divided into 4 categories: flickering, pop-in, shadows, and then a variety of straight weird random shit. In terms of flickering, there are so many instances where things, be that particles, models, or anything, flicker about. This starts as soon as you reach the title screen, where the trail on the wisps are rapidly flickering when they shouldn't be, and your eyes better get used to this because you'll be seeing a lot of it. The smoke emitted into the air from Eggman's machinery in Planet Wisp flickers. The dust coming off of the Spike Wisp when you're charging a spin dash flickers. The fish that swim by throughout the backgrounds in Aquatic Park always flicker and never stop. The particles from Sonic's customizable aura periodically flicker behind you. The whole backdrop in this scripted segment in Sweet Mountain has a stroke and flickers like crazy. The roller coasters in Asteroid Coaster sometimes have this flickering orange speed effect around them. Eggman's troll face in Gameland has constantly flickering garbage around it as it follows you, and the list goes on. It's distracting whenever it occurs, which is frequently, and it reminds me of the sort of artifacts you would see if your graphics card is dying or something, or you push your overclocking too far on it. Pop-in is the next category, and let's put the following out there: OG Colors is not flawless in this regard either. There were certainly moments on the Wii where I noticed pop-in on distant objects, but it was well within acceptable standards for the system, and the 480p resolution also masked much of it pretty well. Sadly, not only are all these instances of pop-in of distant objects exposed in their full glory in Ultimate because of the increased resolution, on top of that, there is a bunch of new pop-in that I verified is not in the Wii original. The giant-ass Ferris wheel in Tropical Resort, yeah, that just casually disappears before the camera has even off-screened it, and then comes back and goes away again if you move back and forth between a certain point. The ships in the background in Starlight Carnival, sometimes they gracefully spawn in with the special effect they're supposed to, but they also have a tendency to pop in and out of existence without the effect. In Act 1, the giant ship here in particular is already partially visible before the effect even happens, and then the rest of it shows up shortly after. At the start of Aquatic Park Act 1, there is a black void in the distance that only materializes into what it should look like a certain distance in. The ceiling glaringly goes away here and can easily be triggered to come in and out similarly to the Ferris wheel. Entire stage geometry in Tropical Resort Act 3 disappears right in front of your eyes in a secret section you are very much intended to reach with a new Ghost Wisp, and that's where I'll cut it for the pop-in. Not because I don't have more examples of it, but we gotta move on, and pop-in is one of those obvious things that a remaster of a Wii title should resolve basically entirely. It should never be worse. As for the shadows then, which is a little more of a mixed bag, in OG Colors, enemies rocked simple circle shadows, and these didn't show up until you were closer to said enemies. Ultimate gives everybody proper shadows, but they still have to fade in and out depending on the camera's distance to the enemies, and there's also an issue with the animation for certain shadows, refreshing like they came out of a frickin' Mr. Game & Watch handheld. What was always projected correctly on the Wii though is Sonic's own shadow. In Ultimate, on the other hand, the visibility of Sonic's shadow on these bright pathways has a mind of its own. Sometimes you can see it reasonably well, other times it seems more faded, and then on Asteroid Coaster's boss encounter, it's absent altogether for the whole fight. Moreover, Supersonic does not have a shadow. Like, at all. Never. Nowhere. It looks really off, especially coming off of OG colors, where Supersonic does have a shadow. This shouldn't be a 2 steps forward, 2 steps back deal. It should only be steps forward with no steps back. So that just leaves us with the straight weird random shit that was introduced in Ultimate. There's no rhyme or reason to these, so let's rattle off, shall we? Sonic not falling down like he should, and instead slowly floating in at the start of Starlight Carnival Act 3. Sonic's eyes not moving in any of the stage intros when they do in the Wii original. Why is such a basic facial detail for the character missing? Sonic's model not having a fade-in effect as it jumps out into the planet maps. Sonic's walking animation on planet maps is slowed down and awkward, even though the footstep sound effects are still fast. This blue filter that covers the whole screen when you go underwater, but it also covers part of the screen that isn't submerged yet, and the lack of a transition or anything looks bad. These enemies that had disappeared becoming visible again underneath the ground when I activated the Laser Wisp. The trail for the Laser Wisp being really dim, making it harder to see and aim your shots, directly affecting gameplay. The Laser Wisp can now shoot straight upwards, which it was never supposed to be able to, and can bring you up so high that the developers seemingly didn't account for it. The pipes underground in Tropical Resort not displaying at all, only their outline. Rings being solid black circles in the same section, what the heck? The camera being misplaced here in Starlight Carnival Act 1, revealing the out-of-bounds portion of the stage you are not supposed to see. Sometimes confetti does not come out of these rockets in Sweet Mountain as they impact the ground, while other times it does. The Wisp UI at the bottom left of the screen is messed up during the final boss with these white rectangles as the bar is draining. The fire out of Metal Sonic's exhaust port is a misaligned flat texture, and undoubtedly there's more I've seen that I've forgotten about, but I think you get the picture by now anyway. Suffice it to say, the graphics in Ultimate are thoroughly unpolished, which is a critical failure when one of the main selling points of a remaster is nicer graphics. For crying out loud, the static backgrounds on the result screens are not even of the appropriate resolution. They're probably still 480p, which looks nasty blown up on a 1080p or 4K display, and leads to a jarring mismatch between them and the foreground elements. You cannot tell me they could not have made new images for the result screens. Come on, man. Individually, many of the oddities and shortcomings I've demonstrated can be brushed off as nitpicks, but there is such an abundance of this crap that I think it's fair to say the visual appeal is severely diminished, doubly so if you're familiar with OG colors. Ultimate's fresh coat of paint is already divisive, but any improvements it brings may as well be nullified in my eyes, and in the future I'd much prefer to play the game on Wii, 480p 30fps and all. At least you get an infinitely more refined presentation that way. You also don't get broken audio with OG colors, which you do with Ultimate. Actually, I might argue that the audio is even more offensive. The most immediately apparent issue is that sound effects are screwed up, and they can fail to play or cut off before they are finished properly. And the volume level for them is all over the place. Sometimes they are loud as balls, sometimes barely audible, and this can even apply to the very same sound effect. In addition to that, the sound effects constantly bounce back and forth between the left and right ears. Combined with the volume irregularities, this makes for an unpleasant listening experience to say the least. For the maximum effect, I encourage you to use earbuds or headphones for this example. This is what the game sounded like for all of my playtime, and if that's not awful enough, music can randomly refuse to play. I've had it happen on the title screen, when activating wisps, on the results screen, and even when transforming into Supersonic, leaving me with only sound effects for the rest of the level. And I must stress again, all of these are regular occurrences, not one-off bugs, so I'm left utterly baffled. I suppose while I'm on the topic of audio, I should credit the fact Ultimate did receive new remixes for all the stage themes. In OG Colors, there were 3 variants of a planet's music, using each twice since there are 6 acts per planet, but in Ultimate, all 6 now have their own unique variant. That's certainly an appreciated effort, and I'm glad that, if anything, Sega still takes pride in their banger soundtracks and are willing to go the extra mile in that regard. I'm not a fan of all the new arrangements. I think Tropical Resort Act 1 sounds kinda cheap, for instance. But there is also some fire material in there, such as Terminal Velocity Act 1. All the same, I've even got some critiques here. One of them is that there is no option to turn off the new music, or inversely to only have the new music. This is not the end of the world, but there is no downside to having the option. Also, I'm not sure if this is a bug or intentional, but only the 3 new remixes are used for all 6 bosses. If they wanted to stay consistent, they should have at least still have the old versions play for half of the bosses. That said, what I find most unacceptable is how the new Planet Wisp arrangements are locked behind a paywall. They are not included in the standard edition of Ultimate, only the deluxe edition, which is $5 extra. In my personal opinion, $40 is already a fairly high asking price for a re-release of what is not that meaty of a game in terms of content, so for Sega to pull this stunt is rather greedy. Principally already, but factor in the rushed and unfinished wreck this remaster has turned out to be, and it only further paints them in a negative light. Well, that covers everything related to graphics and audio really, so are there any gameplay changes at all to mention? Yes there are, but I hate being so harsh and cynical here. Very few of them improve the game in any substantial way. In my opinion, the best addition is the park tokens you can find throughout stages, rewarding exploration more so than OG Colors, and the higher your rank upon finishing a level, the more you receive as well. These park tokens can then be exchanged for accessories and other custom cosmetics that alter Sonic's appearance. I imagine this is the sort of bonus kids would really enjoy, especially since the series has garnered a bunch of new, younger fans with the 2020 movie, and I'm all for cute, harmless extras that can bring joy to people. The rest of the gameplay tweaks and additions, though, are a waste of resources as far as I'm concerned. One of Ultimate's touted features is the new Ghost Wisp. While I commend the attempt of adding another power-up for players to mess around with, in practice it is unremarkable. The Ghost Wisp allows you to hover around and pull yourself toward enemies in these designated green balls, which sounds cool on paper, but they don't do anything clever with it in the level design. Most usually when you find a Ghost Wisp capsule, it means there is an area right by that you pull yourself toward to find some goodies or a red ring, and that's the extent of it. Creative puzzles or challenges are lacking. For the most part, it's inoffensive. I don't think it really hinders the gameplay, except when the developers are so adamant about having you use the Ghost Wisp that they placed an invisible wall in this gap you can normally slide through in the Wii original. My first thought when I ran into this was that I encountered a glitch, and I was almost going to restart the stage as a result. But then I figured they wanted me to use the Ghost Wisp that was located further back into the level. Why couldn't they close the gap with actual geometry? An invisible wall is just so sloppy and slapdash and communicates the wrong thing to the player about what's going on and what they're meant to do. Besides the Ghost Wisp, another advertised mechanic is Tail Save, where if you fall into a pit, the two-tailed fox will come to your rescue and put you back on what seems to be the nearest ground without being sent back to the last checkpoint. While I can see the value in this for very inexperienced players, for myself, I don't want it, since Colors has plenty of checkpoints to boot, and Ultimate removed lives from the equation on top of that, so there are no game overs. But, of course, because the game is allergic to options, it doesn't allow you to turn off Tail Save. That's stupid, and it doesn't help that the implementation is also scuffed. There were parts where I fell into pits and Tails never showed up to carry me out. There doesn't seem to be a clear reason for this, and it's just kinda confusing. And worse yet, Tails save can actively break stage components. Sidestep sections don't function anymore after it. Sonic reverts to the usual free control you have over him, which is not right. And I ran into this reliably repeatable glitch in Starlight Carnival, where the game sets a 3D flag for a 2D segment, giving you full 3D control with all the consequences you'd expect from that following. Beyond that, all objects in the stage reset after a Tails save. This includes rings, red rings, wisp capsules, etc. Yet, all the while, your own ring count does not reset. As such, this can be abused to obtain S ranks much more easily than you could in OG colors. Be this an oversight or not, it's an obvious exploit that should not be there. And lastly, we've got the new rival rushes against Metal Sonic that unlock in each planet after collecting 15 red rings. I gotta be honest, this feature strikes me as a marketing ploy to create the illusion of added value without actually adding value. Metal Sonic is essentially a staff ghost you race against, which looks shoehorned in, standing in midair when his platform cycles don't line up with yours and shenanigans of that nature, and if you're halfway decent at the game, you probably won't have to try hard to outdo him. The developers only set a single time as well, with no increase in challenge as you beat it like, say, Sapphire, Gold, and Platinum relics do in Crash Bandicoot, and you only get one measly rival rush per planet, not even for every act in the game. This reeks of half-assed and low effort. From the hilariously amateur image that pops up before you begin a rival rush, it reminds you of those scam ads about hot babes in your area who want to bang you, or a magic method to extend your penis by 500 inches, to the versus screen that looks like it was put together in an hour in After Effects, the icons on the race tracker that have a face portrait for Metal Sonic but a full body render for Sonic himself. It's just embarrassing. Hell, in Tropical Resorts, Sonic's icon got stuck on the tracker for me and wouldn't move up, even though I was well ahead of Metal Sonic the entire race. It's a damn joke, and while gameplay bugs are not nearly as common as visual and audio ones, there is still a share of it. Some of the speed boosters and loops consistently break now, causing Sonic to be shot backwards or fall down halfway through. The behavior of certain enemies and hazards has sped up by 200% due to the doubling in frame rate, which results in all these spike balls being shot out at an insane pace in Planet Wisp, for example. And in Tropical Resort Act 1, this craziness happens, and I am very, very confident I have never ever seen that in the Wii original. Jesus Christ. And hey, this doesn't fall under the umbrella of bugs, but the load times are longer than they have the right to be. Playing on the Wii with an original disc, the first stage takes about 5 seconds to load, whereas in Ultimate on the PS4 Pro, it takes 12 seconds. That's over twice as long on exponentially more powerful hardware, and with a storage medium that's heaps and bounds faster than DVDs. Yeah, the assets are of higher resolution, no shit, and I've heard from peers that the PS5's SSD reduces the loading quite a bit, but none of that is an excuse. Everything is pointing to the fact Ultimate is poorly optimized. Furthermore, for a remaster, it's a shame there are barely any quality of life improvements to highlight. Really, I can only think of one quality of life improvement: the ability to rebind buttons, which is always good. Sidestepping is still on the analog stick though and cannot be mapped to a button, but past that, I am drawing a blank. Like, I actually do have a few pet peeves with OG colors, the first one being that if you accidentally hit the button to retry the stage on the results screen and then exit out, the game does not register the stage as finished. That's really flawed design. Ultimate had the opportunity to fix this, but the snafu is ever present. Similarly, you must finish the current stage in order to make any new red rings you've collected count. This is dumb. I mean, I've already beaten the level before, so I shouldn't have to beat it all over again. Finding the red rings you were missing should be enough, and I don't think anybody would argue against that. This quirk makes the process of 100%ing the game considerably more tedious and time-consuming than it needs to be, and as you would expect by now, Ultimate does not address it. Eliminating these sorts of complaints is one of those touches that can elevate a remaster over the original, and make it stand out as the definitive version. Unfortunately though, if it wasn't evident at this point yet, I think Sonic Colors Ultimate is anything but the definitive version. Now, initially this review was not going to be as scathing as it ended up being, but when I saw more and more people coming out with their experiences, I couldn't help but be immensely disappointed. I've seen tons of reports of the game outright crashing multiple times for others, even on the latest patch. This only happened once to me admittedly, so I guess I was lucky in that sense, and in the worst case scenarios, these crashes ended up corrupting save files. They aren't isolated incidents either. I've seen a handful of tweets about wiped saves, and when the PC version has noticeable input delay and can cause blue screens for users because they have their controller plugged in before opening the application, something's gone awry. The icing on the cake was when word came out about the Switch port. As that went public, my Twitter timeline became flooded with clips of exclusive Switch problems, and I am giving you a massive warning again. I repeat, massive warning that aggressive, seizure-inducing footage is coming up shortly. If you are sensitive to that sort of thing, proceed with caution or skip to the timestamp shown on screen. It's been discovered that by hopping between planet maps a few times, a memory leak occurs and causes serious graphical anomalies, the severity of which cannot be adequately described with words. How something this rancid started happening on the day of release and was nailed down by the community shortly after is a disgrace. This is legitimately dangerous and a legal liability for Sega. It is mind-boggling this was ignored or otherwise never caught during the QA and verification processes. Seeing other people's input on this remaster in conjunction with my own destroyed any benefit of the doubt I was willing to give Sega on this one. Let me be abundantly clear that I mean no disrespect toward individuals at Sega or the developer Blind Squirrel. I am sure many of the people there worked hard on the game and didn't want to deliver this disaster as much as we didn't want to receive it. Nevertheless, I cannot mince words. Sega, as a company, should be ashamed they put Colors Ultimate out in the state they did on any platform. If upcoming patches end up solving all the issues with all the releases of this game, which is basically up in the air as of the writing of this script, then that's a noble cause and worth acknowledging, but the damage has been done. This is a problem with the industry at large, but patches are meant to further improve and solve issues and bugs that crop up after a game has gone gold. They are not meant to be a comfy safety net you rely on to fix what was never ready in the first place. Back in my day, triggering creepypastas out of games required you to purposefully and carefully tilt cartridges and whatnot, but it seems nowadays that's something we get out of the box from publishers once in a while, and that's kind of disheartening, isn't it? You know what else is upsetting? The original Sonic Colors on the Wii was a polished title, and that without any patches whatsoever. We can debate all day about how much we like or dislike the game itself, but from a technical perspective, it was solid and stable. That is the standard we should expect from products that we spend our hard-earned money on, and the Ultimate label on the remaster is frankly an insult, when in reality the Ultimate version of Sonic Colors between the two is the one we've had for 11 years now.